My iPad does not show if we're live anymore. So are we live now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is Senate Government Operations. It is April 1st, and we did not specifically choose this date to do the confirmation hearings. I didn't even think about when I scheduled them. So just so that you know, we have to go into a joint assembly at 2:00. But so Commissioner Fastigi, we're going to see why it is that you think that you would like to continue in this role. What is it that attracts you to it, and why do you want to continue?
Thank you. Sorry, Chairwoman Senator White. I wanted to acknowledge my virtual background. I think April 1st as a snowy day at the State House. It's kind of not really an April Fool's joke, right? It's kind of a crazy time for us, but thank you for having me in today. This is an amazing job. I have an amazing team. We have about a little over 90 employees in the Department of Human Resources. And it's very rewarding to be an organization that's supporting state government, kind of the back office of state government, and all the things that employees really need to make their work lives kind of smooth and successful, so the other departments that are providing the direct service can actually do that work. So it's I think the fact that the team that I work with in human resources is such a professional, dedicated group, and really are experts in their fields is it's a great environment to work in, and also to be able to use my 30 years of business background to serve state government. So that's why I'd like to continue. Particularly this year, I think has been an incredibly challenging year for all Vermonters, but particularly, all Vermonters really, and state government employees have really stepped up and worked really hard to serve Vermonters, including my team. So it's really rewarding to see when things are really tough, how my team, as well as all the state government, just really pulled together to serve Vermonters the best way they were able to.
Great, thanks. Senator Colmore?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Beth. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
So you mentioned 40 years in business, except for this year. Take this year out of the equation, kind of. Was there something about the job when you were in it a year or so that surprised you, that you weren't expecting, sort of, that you maybe had preconceived notions about, and you went, I never thought about that?
Surprised me. Well, I'm just finishing up my 4th year, and I think just even way back when I first started working for state government, one of the things I thought, well, we have a form for everything. So some things were pretty I would say not overly bureaucratic, but a lot of things just hadn't been modernized. And I don't know I think that actually surprised me how many forms we had to fill out. But what's been really nice, I think, is going forward is the work that we do for continuous improvement and try to make things more smooth and easier for state government. For example, recently, one of the things that we have a deferred compensation plan, so employees can provide extra savings above and beyond their own pensions, right? So they have this program, and it's always been, you have to, you fill out the form and then you send it to here and then you send it here. But now we just actually put that online, so employees can, just this past week, we got that online. So now employees, especially we have employees working remotely, they can just do that, do that from wherever they're working, and available any time of the day. So just kind of those, even small improvements that they make employees' lives a little bit easier, I say, is it's not surprising, but it's just the kind of the little things we do each day to try to make government run more efficiently and more smoothly, make me kind of proud to be part of it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Senator Clarkson?
Well, it's always great to see Beth. I have a lot of questions actually, but I'll start with what is the biggest lesson you think that the human resources department has learned during COVID? What are the biggest lessons, and how do you see changing HR as a result of what we've gone through with COVID?
I think we're because we're a customer service organization, we've always been, really first thinking about the customers out in those agencies and departments and how we can best serve them. I think one of the things that we learned is we don't have to be right in the same room to serve them, which actually can save a lot of time because, so one of the teams that work in HR is what we call our field representatives, and they work, they're assigned to different agencies, and especially those who had multiple agencies spread out across, the Montpelier complex or in Waterbury. They spent a lot of time traveling between those various buildings and agencies, and it wasn't necessarily particularly the most efficient. So I think we've learned now that we can still serve our customers really well and not actually have to be there in front of them all the time. I mean, more than we're doing obviously would be nice, but it doesn't have to be at every meeting all the time. And that actually saves us time so we can get focus a little bit more on the other work that we need to do, and either do it with, fewer errors or do it more quickly. So that type of, I think we'll definitely see that going forward. Another thing is one of the things that is part of human resources is our Center for Achievement in Public Service, which is CAP sits up at Vermont College, and it's our training center. And we moved all our in-person training, we moved that online. And the instructors who did that were always, the very good in-person instructors, really hadn't done a lot of online teaching before. So we've learned a lot of new tools. And really that I think will be very helpful for state employees going forward, because for a 1 hour training to have to travel 3 hours from Brattleboro to come up to Montpelier to take a 1 hour training and then go back to Brattleboro, or we have the tools now and the confidence that we're able to do that online is going to save a lot of time. And we can use that time to better serve Vermonters. So I think my team stepping up to really, we don't, thinking about the first couple of days of pandemic, we'll just wait, this will be over. And then realizing in a month, this isn't going to be over. And okay, what do we need to do to make this a really rewarding experience and valuable for employees? And they just really stepped up and learned and are doing such a great job.
Senator Ram?
Thanks, Beth. Have you tried to standardize anything different about hiring practices and what hiring committees have to do where they advertise in order to try and diversify the state workforce?
So one of the things that we've done in the past couple of years is we completely changed our recruitment, how we assist agencies and department with recruiting. We used to be more of a transactional agency. So it used to be just helping them post the jobs in the system and move the hiring, we call them requisitions, kind of through the system to the next stage. And we were more just working the system, but we weren't really helping them as much, I would say, as actual recruiters. So not only do we have a new system that enables us to, it's much easier and much easier for the hiring managers to actually post jobs, look at resumes. We also changed our whole process. So we have hiring consultants, recruitment consultants that work with agencies and departments. Other things that we do to help recruitment is we do offer trainings on interviews, standardized interviewing processes, so that you use a panel of people and you're asking all the candidates the same questions. One of the things that our recruitment software can do is it can actually look at job descriptions and pick up information about bias within the job description. So if your job description looks like it might be more geared towards a male employee, you can take out language that you can put in language that maybe is more appealing to all demographics. So that's one of the things that this system can do as well. With respect to we also help them find other places to recruit. And a lot, with now that things are online, a lot of the places that you can, post resumes are free. So there's a lot of national organizations that you can do outreach to, organizations within the state, and provide that information. So we are helping them, and we're continuing to work on how we can assist departments even further to try to diversify the workforce through recruitment.
Senator Polina, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, actually, my question was going to be pretty similar to Senator Rahm's. I was going to ask you, so maybe you've already answered this. If you have, I'll go on to another question. I was going to ask what, if anything, your department is doing or can do to create a more diversified workforce, bring more diverse voices to
Right.
bear.
Well, another thing that that I know that you love in this committee is our workforce report. And our workforce report does provide data on the demographics of our workforce. So so that's actually a good tool to assist agencies and departments, because they can actually look at the data and see where is, do we have an issue with the retention, or is it hiring, and what does that look like? And then with our new software that we have for recruitment, we can actually look at the hiring process and see where maybe a BIPOC employee maybe didn't get the job, but did they get to the interview stage and not get to the job, not land the job, or did they not get past the first screen and something was wrong with their resume? So we can kind of break things down like that, and we're just starting to do that and analyze more to see if it's more, if we kind of have issues in any particular areas that we can work on and provide and help departments provide action plans. And one of the action plans that we have in their toolkit already is more of a standardization for the interview process. And through our agreements, and because we're a public employer, one of the things that we do is, jobs do have to be posted for a certain amount of time, and we do have minimum job qualifications. So there are standards, but then there's also which I think is very good, because I think there's distinct things we're looking for, but we can also reach out to agencies and departments and say, hey, we're not getting, enough candidates, or we're not getting a diverse applicant pool. Well, we can look at, what are your minimum job qualification? Is that holding someone back? Are you requiring a 4-year degree? Or can that 4-year degree be replaced with some experience? Because everybody might not have the 4-year degree, but you might have work experience that could substitute for that and be perfectly capable of doing that job. So those are the types of things that we do and can do that can help, maybe open up the job pool a little more, or the applicant pool a little more, if we
Senator
find
Clarkson?
that's an issue.
Senator Clarkson?
I guess I'd be curious what you feel your biggest challenge is going forward.
I think short term, one of the biggest challenges I think is just all the particular stressors that are impacting our employees in the workforce. The pandemic has been very difficult for all Vermonters, including our employees. So we have things we have resources, and we provide employees resources, like we have an employee assistance program, our health insurance. People can have access to all mental health counseling at no copay. So we have a lot of good tools. We have an excellent wellness program. But getting that information out to employees, having employees taking advantage of that when they're feeling that they might need a little help, or how do you reach out to them, and how do we do the best we can to make them or enable them to be happy and healthy in both their work life and their personal life. So I think that's kind of the short term and I think that everybody's kind of thinking about these things. And then the long term, I think there's looking forward. There's a couple of projects that we do have in our budget. We have our classification project, and we would certainly love to have a new classification system, and pairing that with perhaps with a new compensation system, which is kind of a long-term project, but that will help us be a more competitive employer going forward, and hopefully help us attract and retain the emerging workforce. Especially as our workforce ages and the baby boomers begin to retire. Before the pandemic, it was a really tight job market. Now that we're starting to hire pretty heavily again, we are going to need to work, I think, to recruit people to this workforce. There's just not. It's the demographics of the state. It's not. I think this is a great place to work. There's so much variety in the work we do at the state of Vermont. It's like a bunch of little companies and agencies, and the people that generally work there, I think our jobs are very mission oriented. So people are pretty passionate about what they do, and it's easy to get behind the passion of the mission. And we can back that up with pretty good salary and fantastic benefits. So we have a lot of things going in our favor in recruiting, but in Vermont, just recruiting is a big challenge, and the next generation will be a big challenge.
Thanks.
Senator Rahm?
Well, just sort of on that note, I'm going to bring up the P word only in the sense that as we talk about pensions, it's been helpful to hear from people what they could be getting in other states. And I know it's not an apples to apples comparison, but it's been really interesting to understand how they see competitiveness across New England potentially for these kinds of roles. How often do you track that? And maybe you said, I was trying to read through your
Right.
whole report, do you kind of keep track of our benefits and compensation as where we are in the sort of median with other states or our region?
So I think that there's a couple of different things. Because retirement and pensions are under the treasurer's office, I'm not as close to that as I would like. What I do, I am on the VSERS retirement board, so I'm certainly familiar with our retirement system. And the vast majority of the employees that work for me in the state of Vermont are in what's called our defined benefit pension plan. We have another pension plan also, a defined compensation plan, which a lot of exempts are in because it's a plan that's a little different, and it doesn't necessarily promote longevity. But when you're in an appointed position, you don't necessarily expect that you're going to be working for 30 years for the state. And then we have, so we have we have those two, and then we also have what's called the deferred compensation program, which is more like a 401k in the private sector. So overall, we do have really good retirement benefits. And so you compare that to anybody in the private sector, I think, in Vermont, and we are kind of second. I would say we probably have the best, unless you're looking at maybe other people in government, like a municipal government comparison. When you're looking at, but you're looking at a lot, like an engineer that might work for the Agency of Transportation or an engineer in the private sector, you may be trading maybe a little bit lower salary, but for superb healthcare benefits, a little bit more job security, more likely, and a retirement and a good retirement plan. So we do have a structural problem with our pension program, and it's the biggest changes that we saw over the past year are definitely related to demographic changes, and one of them is people are living longer, which is great, but we have to pay them longer in the pension plan. So that's one of the assumptions that changed and really increased the unfunded liability this year, and would increase the amount that we would have to pay, that we've been doing for the past, since I've been here, very aggressively. The legislature has approved a budget every year that increases the amount we're paying in to pay off that liability. So, it's this time is certainly stressful for employees as well. People are concerned. I guess what I would say is, for people to take a deep breath, wait to see what comes out. I expect that, Treasurer Pierce has said that her proposal would certainly give employees time to make any decisions. And I expect that the legislature would do that as well. Our employees are definitely we wouldn't we wouldn't be able to serve Vermonters without the great employees that we have. So I think that, I applaud and appreciate the legislature for doing this really difficult work, and it's important to do, and we need to come up with a solution that's going to be good for Vermonters and employees for the long term. So I think that's really mostly what I have to say about it. But when you're looking at recruiting new employees, I think new employees are really thinking about, is there a pension system? Great. But the other thing we want to look at is what other things do new people who are entering the workforce want? What is most important to them? So especially younger folks, that might be part of it, but what else are they thinking about? And that's kind of the things that I think about going forward. What are they doing at the, what are the new cool benefits that we need to do to attract people? I mean, obviously we can't have, happy hour at work. That's not something that we can do in state government. We're not going to promote something like that. But, last year, 2 years ago, it seems like last year, because last year seems like Labora, but we had an infants in the workplace program. So employees up to 6 months, of the infant's age of 6 months, they can actually bring their infants to the office. In some situations, obviously, there's some situations where you can't have your baby at work if you're in law enforcement or something like that. But for most administrative jobs, to be able to have that as an option helps people get back into the workforce maybe a little quicker, or helps with their, financial stability, not having to pay for daycare so early. And also helps with the bonding, but that type of benefit and flexible employee benefits, I think, are something that people are really looking for. So looking at ways that we can work with our labor partners to bring those things to our employees.
A season's pass to our state fairs or to our state parks.
Or maybe we shouldn't define all jobs or the work week as being 40 hours.
Right.
Need to be able to. So anyway.
But also, I mean, I think to tag on to Keisha's question, what we look at in economic development is how we in almost every sector, we underpay about 20%, independent of the benefits package. What's our pay like? And I think you're getting at that when you do your classification work, because, we're still, compared to other states around us and compared to, it would be very interesting to know how our pay is compared to New York, Massachusetts, state employees in those states too.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I mean, you're competing against those places, the cost of living in those places is also more. So it's like more affordable typically to buy a house in Vermont than it is in,
Yes and no.
County, New
I mean,
York,
not
but-
if you're looking at one county, state
Right.
government, it's not more expensive to,
But-
Vermont is an expensive place to live.
It is. And it's a great place to live. Obviously, we all live here. We all love it, but it's expensive. Luckily, we have the great outdoors, which is mostly free, and we've been able to enjoy it certainly for the past year.
So Madam Chair, we have
Yes,
5 minutes until our,
I realize that. Senator Polina?
This may be the last question, I guess, but I was going to ask you, if you were to lose this job tomorrow, what would you want to do if you weren't doing this job?
Oh, that's
What
a
would be
good
your next
question.
career?
My next career, I don't know. One of the things that I've been doing, which has actually been pretty fun and rewarding, is I was volunteering at some of the vaccination clinics operated by the Department of Health. And that was incredibly rewarding to see how appreciative the people were who were able to finally get vaccinated. And just see how appreciative and thankful they were. And then also to just see how well organized the Department of Health was doing that. So I think the Department of Health is a great place to work. So I wouldn't mind working for them. They've got some job postings, by the way, if anyone's looking and listening on YouTube. I think something really still interfacing with the public and providing them good service, I would want to do.
Thanks.
We are in desperate need of nurses. You could always go back to nursing school.
I could.
That's good. But you know what? Really nice for you to see one of your own departments in action and go and work with them.
That's
That
right.
was great.
Mhm.
What a
That's
great opportunity.
So I was just, trying to plug a few job openings we have at the state of Vermont. So we do, we do have job openings. So if you have people that are looking for work, check out our website and see what's available now and maybe in the future.
Thank you. I think we have to jump into our joint assembly to see if we have new judges or not. And this is counting the votes on the judges' retention.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Thank you
And if
very much.
Thanks,
Think of
Beth.
anything else you'd like to tell us, just email it off to us.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great
Okay.
day, everybody.
So committee, we have a few minutes here before Secretary Quinn joins us. So does anybody want to make a motion to accept any of these bills, to report out these bills? Allison, Senator Clarkson?
I would move that we vote out H 338, an act relating to reapportionment proposal deadlines. I would vote that we move it out favorably
Without amendment, right?
without an amendment.
Okay. All right. So Ms. Clerk, would you like to call the roll?
I would. Senator Clarkson,
Yes.
Senator Collmore,
Yes.
Senator Polina,
Yes.
myself, Senator Rom, yes, Senator White.
Yes.
And that passes without amendment on a vote of 5-0-0.
And who would like to report this bill?
I will if
Anybody?
nobody else wants to.
Okay, great.
All it does
Thanks.
is move dates, right? I mean, it's
Right.
not really tough. I don't want any tough ones. I don't want any tough ones.
You've been doing fine so far this year.
I think
Okay.
your batting average is like 100%.
How about 149? Is anybody ready to move on that?
Yep. I would move that we vote out H 149, an act relating to modernizing statutes related to the Vermont National Guard, out favorably without amendments.
Okay,
All right. Senator Clarkson,
Yes.
Senator Collmore,
Yes.
Senator Polina,
Yes. Yes.
myself, Senator Rom, yes, Senator White,
yes.
and that passes 5-0-0.
What is H 135? Can somebody remind me? I just have the numbers here.
I don't have H 135 here. I have the next one for us to consider is H 154.
No, I would
H-
like us,
H 135 is an act relating to the State Ethics Commission.
we're putting
We
that
are
off till
not ready
Friday.
to vote that.
We're putting that off till Friday. The 154, I would like for us to put off until we hear from the Education Committee. I mean, no, that's the one that if we were to do something about school boards, we would add it
All
there.
right. That's the one
So we
about not
need to-
accepting an office.
Yeah,
Oh, right. Right. And our boards and commissions.
that we're also waiting on the Education Committee to see if we should add in any of the language on the school board changes. All right.
On
What
this,
happened yesterday with 151? When I was in, I
Remember,
think
we
I
had that
was,
long conversation about the price of the books and all that and
oh, no,
the
no.
contracts, and we decided to put it aside till Becky Wasserman came in to tell us what was going on.
yes,
That's
Nothing happened
338.
with 151. It was canceled.
151 you didn't do, I think, because of the floor time, right?
right.
Exactly.
That's
Okay.
the mausoleums and columbaria.
Correcto. Correcto.
Okay,
Oh, I was thinking of the one about this state publications. I'm sorry.
Right.
yeah,
That has turned out, just when you think a bill is going to be really maybe not our most exciting bill, it turned out to be actually quite interesting.
yeah.
For those of us who swim in the LexisNexis world,
Well, I don't, but I love the green books.
yeah. Well, I'm married to a lawyer, so LexisNexis, and my coffee cup, but none of you serve it. Well, anyway, my coffee cup in the morning is a LexisNexis coffee cup.
Oh.
Has been for 15 years.
So I have a stupid question, about the green books. So we have the green books, Title 17 is whatever in its own green book, but we keep making changes to it. So those all just come out as supplements?
They come out like this as the supplement that goes in the back. And then
Okay.
what happens is every so many years, they go like they start with the
Right.
first book and they work through them and redo them and then start over again. So for a number of years, you're going to live with this supplement in the back
Right.
and then they're going to redo it and incorporate. I think they redid Title 17.
Yeah, we have a
in-
supplement for 17.
I know, but I think they redid
That's great.
17 in,
Here's our supplement. Here's
yes.
our book, and here's
Yep.
the supplement.
Yeah,
So the supplement is a 2020, was put out in 2020 for 2020 and 21. So I think they must have redone this Title 17 pretty recently.
And it fits in. I like
Oh,
the way they anticipate.
2018. 2018, they did the replacement edition of Title 17.
And Gail has a question for us.
Yeah.
Who is reporting H-149?
Oh, Keisha
Who,
loves
what
it.
is that?
The National
the-
Guard.
That's the one with 427 sections,
I don't.
but most of them are technical changes. And whenever I report a bill like that, instead of going through them at the beginning, I say sections 1, 2, 17, 24, 70, blah, 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 are all technical changes and never mention them again.
Right.
I'm happy. I'm happy. to-
Okay. All right, great. Thank you, Gail.
Sure, and we have
That was Amber, right?
Secretary Quinn in the waiting room.
Oh,
That
okay,
was
so
Damien.
let's,
So Keisha
Huh?
has long experience with the Guard from House General.
Oh,
okay.
That's her.
Keisha, did you ask whose last counsel was that?
yeah. Was it Amarin?
It was Damien, I think, who did that.
Damien.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Damien does.
Okay, so Secretary Quinn, thank you for joining us. I do have to say that your backdrop there is a little deceiving today, I believe. Is this a fact that it's April Fool's Day?
I guess so. I'm an optimist, right? I'm hoping for the best for tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
Well, and tomorrow, if it was up to David Sheets, they'd be up like that tomorrow.
I'm sure they would.
So we are looking at your nomination here and again are going to ask you a few questions. And so I'm just going to welcome you and ask you kind of a basic question about what is it about this job that makes you want to continue it for another couple of years?
Sure. We're starting now.
We might as well.
Okay.
And it's good to see you, John. We haven't seen you for a long time.
It's nice to see all of you. Senator Rem, I'm John Quinn. I'm the CIO and Secretary of Digital Services. I think we have met before, but it's been a while. So why do I want to continue in this job? I think that for me, I've been in public sector for about 20 years now. And this job has given me the opportunity to build a team that has really been able to make a difference, not only in the enterprise, the entire holistic, look at state government and how we operate as an organization, but through the pandemic and the work that we've been able to do and the things that we've been able to accomplish that have had a direct impact on Vermonters, whether it's while it may not always seem it, the quickness that we were able to get the PUA program stood up in labor. I think we had it stood up inside of 3 weeks. We're one of the fastest in the country to be able to do that, even with our older systems in place. To be able to, set up a registration system that has been able to handle thousands and thousands of people all at once. We've come a long way from the old Vermont Health Connect build and the way we do things and the technologies that we use. I think, when I look at the future and the leadership team that we have in place right now, there's a lot of opportunity to help Vermont grow, make sure that we're putting technology systems in place that will not only offer additional service and improve service to Vermonters, but save or cost avoid in the future as well. And, I have a number of examples where we've been able to do that over the past couple of years. But when I look out over the next, we'll just say 2 years, I think we're right on that brink of being able to do some really great things and really reshape the way our workforce operates and the services that we offer to Vermonters.
Senator Calmer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, John. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
At one time, and I'm sure it's still true, although I haven't purchased one lately, whenever we bought our own personal computer, by the time we paid for it and figured out which model to order, it was pretty much obsolete, or at least well on its way to, because the technology was spinning at such a pace. So I assume that is still true to some degree, where memory is better and all the stuff that I don't understand that makes it faster and all that sort of stuff. Is that true in your job? And how do you handle that? I mean, how do you plan ahead for something that is going to change so quickly?
So I can address that in a couple of ways. From the hardware perspective, you're absolutely right. Things are changing at such a fast pace that, the day you buy a computer, it doesn't feel like long before it's outdated. Our strategy has been to move things to the cloud, and we call that software as a solution, where things like our email system are now supported by Microsoft. They're responsible for all that hardware piece. We're buying a service, it's a commodity to us. There's a yearly operating cost, but it always keeps us on the latest and greatest versions of the things that we need. We want to be out of the hardware business. We want to be out of the data center business. We want to be in that cloud environment where we can move from that capital expense environment of having, needing $5,000 or $5 million for a system upgrade this year, and then nothing next year, and then 2 years more, 5 million. The peaks and valleys into more of a level, slowly, gradual increasing operating cost. And there, in particular, is where I see a lot of opportunity for the state and how we move forward and how we get ourselves out of this mess of all of this legacy technology that we have all over the place. One of the examples that I gave the other day in an interview was, when we go down to the Department of Labor and you look on the wall, I think the date is June 9th, 1970, the day that they turned on their mainframe. That's older than I am by a ways. So when you think about that, we need to think differently in how we do things. And it's uncomfortable to some degree to a lot of people that are used to, it's easier if I just keep it. We're really trying to move out of that model. The way I stay informed and the way my leadership team stays informed, we're a part of many national groups. One of them is the National Association of State CIOs, where me and the other CIOs from around the country get together and talk about our strategies. We talk about ways to save monies and the technologies that we've used to serve residents of our state. That has been extremely valuable. I've been a part of that group. This is my fourth year a part of that group, and I'm a board member of the National Association this year. So Vermont has had a little bit more of a spotlight on it, having a leadership role in that organization. But that group has been invaluable, and we have that type of group for our technology directors as well. People that are really in the middle of implementing systems and building, cost models and maintaining those systems, so they have peers that they can talk to all the time. Trainings are a must in our line of work. So it's multifaceted on how we stay up to date. My leadership team meets every morning at 7:15 for 45 minutes before we start our day to talk about not only the issues, but the things on the horizon that we can do to improve where we're going.
So I wish the year 1970 was before I was around, but it it was well into my life. In fact, I was beginning to call myself an adult by that year. I guess the verdict's still out there. So if you would, John, because you mentioned the Department of Labor, and obviously there was a lot of interest in that all along about April and May, where we had people that were just so frustrated with the inability of the state to respond quickly enough to allay their concerns about unemployment. Where are we with that? And is there a plan to fix what I assume is a pretty old system?
Yes, in fact, right now, well, the Senate should be seeing the proposal from the administration as well as the House proposal on the Technology Modernization Fund. In that proposal are 3 different Department of Labor projects, one of them being UI modernization. We have had its fits and starts with the UI program. Some of the guidance that came out from the US Department of Labor over 10 years ago was you need to do a consortium if you want our money. That consortium has been a rough go, not just for us, but across the United States. There's only one consortium that has actually put out a product that works. And in that case, it was a product that was used by one state and slightly modified to work for the other states that are using it. That's the only one that's worked so far. There's been hundreds of millions of dollars that have been spent on consortiums. In theory, that is, on paper, it sounds great. You want to, you don't want to duplicate efforts. You want to, team up with others to get things accomplished, but it's not working. So what we did was we've gone out and broken the project down into 4 different phases and have a plan to offer functionality in each one of those phases, replacing pieces of the UI system in a way that we feel will not only deliver services faster, but give us the opportunity to stop and reevaluate as technology changes to make sure that we're always doing the thing that's, most up to date or that's going to work best for our architecture in our environment.
Thank you.
Senator Ram, was that your hand?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so I'd just like to start there, pick up where Senator Collmore left off. Secretary, I've talked to some of your deputies and folks in Department of Labor about the modernization effort for Department of Labor and the UI system. The current document I have is they're calling it a roadmap. It's just a couple pages and doesn't really lay out the scope of requirements. And so when I asked if there was a scope of requirements available, they talked about an appropriation being needed. What do you see as the correct appropriation for something like that? And what would be done in-house versus bringing in an additional consultant? Essentially, what would we be paying for additionally? What aren't you supposed to help develop scopes of requirement?
We do have resources that help with that. A lot of our resources are deployed still in pandemic response, not only to the Department of Labor, but in the Department of Health and Human Services and Public Safety. And so we rely on vendors quite often in these areas. Sometimes depending on the skill set needed, you need to know that line of business as well. And I think that's where a challenge comes in with the Department of Labor is they being Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Labor, all the departments of labor are so bureaucratic heavy, and there's so much process and red tape. You really need to understand that business very well in order to really pull out the requirements out of the business folks there. Their business folks are still in the middle of this pandemic, trying to make adjustments and work through system issues and process issues to get payments out as fast as they can to Vermonters. So,
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So our first appropriation ask was $4.5 million.
And can you share more about your philosophy about how much it would cost to create a scope of requirements the legislature can look at before asking for up to $4.5 million for the entire phase of a project? Which amount is for what?
Sure. So I don't have those amounts in front of me. I'm not on that project team. We have 56 or 57 different projects over $500,000 going on. So when you get to that level, I can certainly get that for you, but I don't have those numbers in front of me at this time.
But just ballparking, are you saying it's 4.5 million to get the scope of requirements, or 4.5 million to do phase one total?
To do phase one total.
Okay, but I'm trying to better understand your philosophy about what the public and the legislature deserves to know about the scope of requirements before we give you $4.5 million for phase one of a project.
Sure. So again, so we've laid out the functionality that will be needed in the new system in phase one, what it replaces, and how, what technologies we'll use in order to replace that functionality that's currently being done on legacy systems.
Is that
So
document publicly available?
It should be. If it's not, we can certainly make it public.
It should exist on a website, probably your digital services. And, then I would love to have a link to that.
Sure.
I have lots more questions, but I can wait and let someone else ask.
So perhaps you could send that link to Gail and she can get it to us. Thank you. Senator Polina?
Maybe I'll ask a question which might lead us back to Senator Rahm as well, but sort of a two-part question. No matter what committee we're on these days, whatever we're trying to do, whether it's taxes, agriculture, education, no matter what it is, we get to a point where somebody says, well, this is going to be hard to do because the computer system needs to be upgraded. It seems like it comes up in every conversation about almost every issue we have. So I'm wondering, number one, how you develop priorities. I mean, are we really that far behind in terms of everything? I know you talk about these legacy programs, and I agree, but I mean, how bad off are we really? But I also wonder, we've often talked in this committee and others about which committee of the legislature should be overseeing digital services. It seems like it's kind of an orphan in a way. So I'm wondering whether your counterparts in other states maybe could inform you as to who they are overseen by in terms of legislators. Does that make sense?
Sure. I ask a lot of those questions of my counterparts, and it varies from state to state. What I would say about, are we really that far behind? We started with an inventory in 2017 of about 1,400 different applications that we were able to identify. Before that, we had no idea how many applications we had.
What do you mean by that, John?
Microsoft Word, UI, the DMV licensing system, each application that does a function for state government.
Okay.
We're down in between 1,100 and 1,200 applications now. So we've slowly been, or I think quickly been, reducing the number of all applications that we have to try to better manage those by looking at what we have in other places, trying to reuse where we can, being able to share common platforms, whether it be a Microsoft platform or a Salesforce platform, and working it into those platforms so we can focus more on training our staff to one particular thing rather than a bunch of different things where we'll never be more than an inch deep and relying more heavily on vendors.
So where would you find a home? Where would you think your home would be in the legislature?
Well, it's in energy and technology in the House. On the Senate side, it is an internal government function for the most part. Right now, under the given structure, I think it's probably in the appropriate place, being House or Senate GovOps. But with that said, I'm not, I don't have a good idea, of how you would reshape that. I know you're limited on members and limited on time and the number of people that can serve on these committees. So it's a tough place, but right now I think probably under the current structure, Senate GovOps is the place for us to be.
Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, we've never quite gotten there.
We've always
I
wondered
mean,
about that
we're
ourselves.
confirming you, but we've never really gotten there in terms of the our rules books are so old that they didn't even consider technology when they wrote the rules and who got what. And we've been going between finance institutions and GovOps. So maybe it's time we make it a decision. That's our responsibility, not yours. Thank you. Senator Clarkson, did you have a?
Yeah, we certainly, those of us who serve on Senate Economic Development are certainly clear on the challenges the mainframe has presented to all of us. But I'd like to ask you sort of bigger question. You and just to give us a picture of your universe in digital services, along with your confirmation, we elevated the department to an agency. So those happened simultaneously. And you were hired as the first secretary. How many, just give us a sense of how many employees you have, how many are embedded in different departments. I just would love to have a sense of that. That's question one. And then I'll ask you question two after that. That's just a kind of.
Sure. So
Describe your universe.
So we're authorized for 388 positions, I believe. We currently have about a 10% to 12% vacancy rating over the past year. So we're running in between 340 to 350 employees at any one time. We have, on a normal year, we have about 280 of those people deployed into the agencies that they're serving.
And that's pretty much every major agency and department?
Yep.
Wow.
When we built the agency, it was a try to do no harm to the agencies that had IT staff, but at the same time, try to improve and prop up the agencies and departments that didn't have particular skill sets. So over time, we've shifted some resources from some agencies to others and tried to really focus on skill sets that were needed based on the applications in those different areas and use our skill sets across multiple agencies to not only save money and not have to hire vendors if agency Y needed something and agency X had the person to be able to do it. We've been able to share resources that way, which is, I think, saved, quite a bit of money over time. I think we've documented just over $17 million in cost avoidance and savings since 2017 from doing things like that.
That's great. So I just like to ask, given that the state's response to COVID and our pivot to working all online, I mean, technology has had just a huge amount to do with our success and presented many of our challenges. I'd just love to know what are your lessons learned, because you were so on the front line of our response in a way, in our successful response to the pandemic. What were your lessons learned from this in terms of your agency?
Over the past year, I think there's been a lot of interesting lessons learned. And I think we've taught a lot of other agencies some lessons as well, not only with the services that we offer, but where we really have strength and where it's made a difference, and a deep difference to the way we've responded, whether it be with our data and our analytics and being able to provide up-to-date dashboards at any point to leadership, to the medical leadership, to state administration, all of it together. We've been able to provide them a good picture of what's going on by the day, sometimes even less than that. Everything from inventory of vaccines to registration to data on, how many people, are registered in each county and each, all the different stuff. That's one area that I don't think that we were relied on before the pandemic. And I think it's really been a good lesson for all of state government to learn about, the types of things that we can do when we use our data correctly. For us as an agency, I think we were an agency that has always been able to work remotely, but has had a management structure in place for, 15 years of middle management that really, felt their staff needed to be there every day in order to be effective. And I think that, we've learned over the past year that we can be very effective. We can probably do more help desk tickets and answer more service requests per day by being home, where we're not running from meeting to meeting down hallways. We're focused, we're in our seats, we're there longer. We're at the fingertips of everyone as they've learned to use the technologies out there. And I think that's probably the third lesson, is the technologies that we've used to help us collaborate in different ways. I think we were slow to change, even as an agency of digital services, with some of the tools that we use to collaborate. And the way we use those tools now have made us more effective and more efficient to get our jobs done and to help our customers.
Thanks.
Senator Rom?
Secretary, I wanted to ask you about user experience. So, I guess a starting question would be, what's your favorite government website worldwide, and what would you be doing in the near future to improve user experience for our state websites?
Sure. So I think if you favorite website worldwide, I follow a bunch of different websites. From the cybersecurity website for the state of Washington has long been one of my favorites. In the information that it offers, it helps me as an executive to look at, the types of things that they're doing and the types of dashboards that they're presenting. The city of Nashville has always had an interesting site that I've paid attention to over the years. Those are probably two of my favorites that I go to the most. Behind that is probably Minnesota. Minnesota offers another good one. We, as one of our strategic goals that we set up in 2017, something that we could measure against was our state of Vermont website, vermont.gov. And if you remember the old website, it was just full of links. And it was outdated and needed improvement. We brought a group of state officials together, state workers. We involved outside entities to put together and to really drive a new website that would be more citizen focused. And I believe we won a award for our Vermont.gov. I think it was the AVA Digital Award of the Year. We've won several awards for our website over the past 4 years, looking at everything from website redesign to Let's Scrap food waste website. The Vermont Rider Education Program won a award. So we're trying to rebuild those and involve not only best practices, but involve users in that experience. When ADS built our website, my group was quick to want to jump in and do a rebuild. And through some group discussion and collaboration among us, our perspective was we shouldn't be doing this. We should let our users do it. So we created a group of outside partner agency employees to help tell us what they would look for in our website. So we were being responsive to what they needed rather than trying to imagine and guess and put together something that we liked. So that's the approach that we've been trying to take as we put together new websites across the state.
I have a follow-up question, if I may.
Yes.
So who do you think is the gold standard for access for seniors, people with disabilities, and people who don't speak English? And how would you like to aspire to serve those folks better through the website?
I don't know who the gold standard is for that. I
asked worldwide because I particularly like gov.uk. They really think about principles like 18-point font and not having to scroll too often and having a lot of, simple language so that it can easily be translated into other languages. But
And I think a lot of that goes to the method or the way they developed their site and who developed it and how it was developed, right? And that upfront user experience and those user stories being collected upfront rather than the government trying to create it. They went out and said, what is it that people really need? What is it that people really want? And how can we offer this to the broadest group of people?
Do you see that? You did talk about other agencies and making it functional for them, but I think that still often misses the people who need the website the most. Do you have any thinking about how you might redesign based on user experience rather than government experience?
We have our chief data officer is in charge of the Vermont.gov group. NIC runs our Vermont.gov portal. And she oversees that contract as well as sits on the web portal board, where that's the group that, really should be taking up the decisions on or, talking about those types of things. And I think they do, but I haven't had a chance to go to those meetings in, well, honestly, about a year now, where I've been a part of that group. So I can follow up with her if you'd like and try to get additional information for you.
So can I just clear in my own mind here, the users of your website are the agencies and the departments, but the users of the agency and department websites are the public. So there's a different audience there for them, because am I right about that or not?
Kind of, right? So I led you to believe that it was just the other agencies that were interested in our website, and it is the public to some degree as well, right? We offer not only some guidance on cybersecurity, but we publish our strategic plan and annual plan and project updates or project stuff out there. So there is a mixture, but yes, we try to make it focused for an outside perspective outside of the Agency of Digital Services. I think that's probably the best way to say it. The other agencies, I think you were right on. It's the front-facing residents of Vermont.
Yeah, Senator Rom?
I've heard of other states having a kind of advisory board of digital experts that have transparent meetings so that kind of these big picture issues can be discussed with the public able to hear that as we try to modernize potentially state government, for example, who's at the table, what's the thinking around it, what's the process going to look like? Do you, I'm a new senator. Do you have an advisory board? Do you have public meetings about the modernization process just writ large?
We've discussed that, and there are some states that do that. New Hampshire is one of them that has an outside board. It's not so much on the modernization as it is an approval process over their projects. Every state is a little bit different in the way they do it, or the states that do that. In Vermont, I think it was 2 years ago, and Senator White might remember better than me, but the legislature created a joint IT oversight committee made up of legislators from both the Senate and the House to oversee issues and to make sure that a governing body was overseeing the overall strategy of the agency and what we were doing in that space, to make sure that, they had a chance to ask questions not only about modernization, but about cybersecurity and user experience and, really anything that they'd like. But a public body outside of that, no, we don't have one at this time.
I think the committee knows a little bit that my philosophy is that we have too little time and too little expertise to be the right body necessarily to do that work.
Yeah.
I have just a couple more general questions, if I may.
Sure. Yeah.
So you started in the beginning to say that you feel like you could talk about some projects that went well. I would love to hear about maybe one example of a project you felt went particularly well and a project you didn't think went well, and what you think went well about the good one, and what didn't go well about the not so good one that you'd learned from.
Sure. So, before the pandemic, we started to really strategize on how to get out of this mess of having so many different applications and trying to find the skill sets to match those applications and really blend our staff. One of the areas that we focused on was a platform called Salesforce, which is a CRM, a customer relationship management platform. And as we moved into the pandemic, we had only 5 or 6 applications that had been built on that, but we had a large amount of success with the applications that had gone. Average time to build an application was a couple weeks, which is much different than traditional state government of a couple years, right? One of the first things that we built was the pandemic unemployment assistance application. We had a bunch of, I'll acknowledge that there was a bunch of user experience type issues. But what it did was not only give us the ability to build something in a month or less, which we wouldn't have been able to get those checks out, and I don't think 4 months if we hadn't been using a platform like that. But it gave us the ability, once people were starting to have issues, once we, dove into the data on the back end, we were able to look and say, okay, 2,000 of these issues or 300 of these issues, whatever the number was, were password related issues, or, we see this or we see that, and we were able to use that data to better inform how to help the citizens. I think that program overall was a success from the very beginning, and I know the Department of Labor has had its challenges in modernizing, but the rapid development of that system and the way we were able to get checks out, I think was a success.
Of the PUA system.
Of the PUA system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had the least. Yeah.
Yeah. I think to name a project that I think has probably, not been so successful is our statewide e-finance system. That is really a financial tool for the districts and the unions to collapse their financial management systems and to put it in a uniform chart of accounts. It was put in legislation that they shall use this system, and we ended up not only with some technology requirement changes that were needed, but because of the changes to the technology, the technology had a hard time adapting or didn't necessarily meet all of those requirements that weren't captured from all of those outside entities before the go live. There was also a large amount of user resistance from the respective districts that made that project a challenge. And I believe there is a bill out there now to delay moving forward until some of these things are figured out. So that is one that, we've been keeping our eye on and trying to, really build a path forward where we can meet the legislative intent and also make it work for the districts out there. So it's a win-win for everyone, but it's certainly been challenging.
I'm not sure if that, I have to admit that that's an issue that I am not intimately involved in or remember very much about it, but it seems to me that one of the problems was, and so it might have been out at the legislators' problem, is that we actually didn't hear from the users before we required them to start using the system because what the system is not designed to accommodate the users. That's the way I understand it, but that was probably our lack of listening to people.
I think it's worth mentioning also, Senator, on the positive side of the programs, all of the grants that we pushed out over $350 million in grants. that was through quickly configuring our Salesforce environment to be able to work in those different programs, whether it be healthcare or agriculture, and to be able to, quickly adjust to be able to get that money out the door. And I think we did that in pretty quick time considering.
Yeah.
So I'm just keep going, but
Yeah, it's okay. If anybody else has something, raise your hand and okay, go ahead.
So I'm really curious your thought on mapping and interactive tools for the public and how to increase functionality around that. Does that fall under you at all? Do you connect with our, geographic services, et cetera? I'd like to see us be able to tie a lot more policy decision-making and public outreach to mapping tools that help people see, different functions of government, different issues, different hotspots of poverty, et cetera, around the state, and how might you liberate that data?
Sure. So what was the VCGI group, and is now part of ADS Data Services, does a lot of that work. Where we sometimes have issue is getting good data, right? And making sure that the data that we're representing out there on these sites is accurate and it's the source of truth. And that, whatever we're putting out there isn't going to be necessarily used, against us in a way where, something's dramatically off or doesn't present the whole picture. We can, if we have the data, we can certainly do a lot of really cool things with it, as I think if you've been looking at that area. And I think it's worthwhile to have that conversation with you offline about, some of the things you're thinking about. Maybe meet with our manager in that area and our chief data officer to explore what data we do have and what our capabilities are, and maybe a timeline for getting some of those things online.
May I just interject? John Adams has been involved over the years with bunches of our committees on different projects. And I think that's a great idea because I'm not sure we're all aware of all the opportunities of service to each other in state government, how the legislature could be served by all those services that you actually offer. It would be great to learn more about, how we could benefit from their work.
Absolutely.
Just so I don't feel, just seem like I'm just grilling you in every possible
It's okay.
job.
Well, I think that I think that you're certainly more knowledgeable in this field than I am. So I'm very happy to have you have the kind of get the conversation going, because it is an area where I feel pretty inept. So,
well, I was just gonna, compliment you on the vaccine portal and, a lot of really life-saving functions that we need to perform right now. And I think we'd be having a very different conversation if any of those were going wrong or 10,000 plus people couldn't sign up on the first day that those websites are available. So I just didn't want it to seem like I'm being entirely critical or sort of abstract. I think that was, very successful for the most part and has been really changing quickly, and you've adapted well to that.
Thank you. I think we have a really good team on it, and compliments to the legislature for giving us the chance as an agency. And I think that's a big part of it. We've been able to move people around and shift people to put the expertise where it's needed at the time. And it's proven that, it was the right thing, especially in that area, to be able to do that. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
so I'm,
Even
oh,
used.
go ahead, Sarah Clarkson.
No, I was just going to say some of us have used it to great effect. It was very straightforward. And, I'm not always so straightforward with all things digital.
And some of us couldn't figure out how to use it. But so I'm just going back to your comment about where kind of technology lives in the Senate. And I know in the House, what they have done is created the Energy and Technology Committee, I believe it's called. So my question is there a difference between internal IT and external IT when we're looking at where it should live here? Because I can see that the internal functions of the IT system and the technology should live in government operations because it is an operation of the government. But I'm not so sure about the external, all those other IT, broadband, telecommunications, all of that, where that should live. Is in your mind, can they be separated?
Yeah, and I think what you mean, just to kind of restate it so I have it clear in my mind. ADS internal, public service, broadband external, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily one application that we run being external, like the Vermont Health Connect or the PUA system, because those are kind of external, right? So
Right.
From my perspective, while we're an internal agency, we definitely offer external applications to the public through the partners that we serve in state government. Broadband is a tricky one for a couple of reasons around regulation, around the expertise in that area, around telecom, cable companies, all of the stuff that's, maybe regulated. And then you have broadband that's not, but sits on the backbone of those regulated areas. So, we've talked about this a bunch. The administration and, the legislature in past years, and it's really hard to put those together under the same agency. From a legislative committee standpoint, it does make some sense because there are some overlapping technologies that take place that both use, and it may be, beneficial to have the same people hearing about the same types of technologies. It may make it easier for a subgroup of people to try to understand all technology rather than two different groups try to understand two different pieces. Broadband is much more of a public policy focused front end, as where we are really the management support end of state government. So I could go either way. As you could probably hear as I'm talking, I don't have a strong opinion on them living together or not. I mean, I could make a case either way, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a conversation that we have to have.
Yeah.
Senator Clarkson?
Yeah, John, I'm just curious, when you talk about for state government, sadly, I wish you had been involved with the court, with the judiciary and the disastrous e-filing system that has been rolled out by them, that they are pressing on the rest of the state to adopt. And it's been such a challenge in Windsor and Windham counties. Did they even give you an opportunity to bid on that? I mean, and why aren't we more aligned why aren't they using you?
They do use the Agency of Digital Services for a number of things. In a lot of cases, I think it's to spread the risk as much as anything, right? So when you look at what they do and what they ask for from us, a lot of the stuff that they ask us for is security type of stuff and cybersecurity, and sharing some of that responsibility for trying to keep their system secure that they have on site.
But did they actually ask you for your ideas on how to develop that platform, that
No.
court? So my question, which has always been a question I've asked you, is what do you see our biggest challenges going forward? Is cybersecurity one of them? Because I know you and Kevin talk about cybersecurity all the time.
We do. Me and Kevin, and even Jeff Lauer's gone now, but Doug Rowe, who is their interim CIO from Barry Dunn, still meet and talk about issues that we're seeing and that we have to keep the three branches of government on the same page if we do see threats. It gets a little bit more sticky because it quickly devolves to, we're our own branch of government. You can't tell us what to use. It becomes very hard as a service provider in the position I'm in, offering a service and telling me that, having another branch tell me that, well, we're a separate branch of government. You can't make us do that. And it's, my position is if you're buying the service from me, I have to protect the enterprise, and therefore this is the way it's got to be. But that's usually where we get tripped up, unfortunately. And even with the separately elected offices, right, we see some of that. And it's a sensitive issue across the state, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be talking and sharing as much information as we can. Modernization of our legacy systems is becoming as much of an issue as cybersecurity, because it is also a cybersecurity issue, right?
Yes,
When we
it makes
can't-
us vulnerable.
When we can't do patches on systems anymore, when we don't have the expertise to run those systems, we have very real Vermont services living on those things, including everyone's driver registrations, right? Including, the most vulnerable in health access, unemployment insurance, just to name three that are all over 40 years old, but are all really big dollar amount projects. And it becomes, go ahead.
Yeah, AHS, DMV, UI, those are three gigantic, very old systems. What if I assume we're going to be able to hopefully use some ARPA money on this, which I assume you're exploring.
Yeah, so I think that's a good pivot point to talk a little bit about what we were trying to do with the governor's proposal of using excess revenues that we weren't expecting in the amount of $53 million to start some of those projects. IE was on the list, DMV was on the list, UI modernization was on the list. Those critical projects, we had 12 projects outlined, $53 million in one-time funds, and a start of an IT special fund. And the ability, or why that IT special fund was so important to me was it gave us a mechanism to start to put money towards and into a special fund where it wouldn't get pulled out, each year, or each little area wouldn't be, fighting for it in a different committee. We would have one centralized place like we do in transportation, or like we do for the capital bill, to talk about all the things in that bucket, all the things technology related, and talk about the administration priorities and talk about the legislative priorities and how we could use that money going forward. We put 12 projects towards it and identified $10.9 million in reoccurring revenue sources that we thought was a good start. So every year it would be replenished with revenues that we had found. The House did not like that proposal, or they did not have enough time to digest that proposal. They took the $53 million and did something else with it. They did not create the special fund. Instead, their proposal was to set $100 million aside and fund 9 out of 12 of those projects, one Defender General project, so 10 projects. But the interesting part was they took all of the Department of Labor projects out and didn't fund any of those at this time. They were looking for additional information that the JITALK committee will take up this summer. That worries me for a couple reasons.
They took DOL out?
They took all 3 DOL projects out.
Hoping for that all being COVID related and ARPA money funded, maybe?
I think they wanted a little bit more information on our strategy. I think that they were overwhelmed with the amount of IT information that was given, if you guys could believe that, and the conversation. And I think they forgot some key elements of what we were doing and why we were doing it in the methodology that we were using to attack the project. and appropriations didn't have enough detail and didn't feel comfortable. So they plan to set $100 million of ARPA money aside in hopes that we can use that money to do those projects. I'm not so sure that we'll be able to do those projects with ARPA money, or not all of them. So I think I'm a little nervous about that at this point, but we still need, guidance from Treasury to figure out, exactly what we can do. But it's a little scary because, if the ARPA guidelines come out, we can end up doing very few, if any, of those projects.
I don't want us to get too deep into this because we
Okay.
actually, I believe, probably have Suzanne in the waiting room somewhere,
Here.
waiting for us.
Yes, we do.
And I did neglect to mention this to when we were talking with Commissioner Fastigi, but I've had a couple requests for people to be able to comment to us on the 4 appointments. And so what we thought we would do is have a time next Thursday, just set aside a little bit of time next Thursday for if people want to come in and just talk to us, because we felt it not right to have that same conversation while we were speaking with all of you. And so now Suzanne has heard that also, and I will mention it to Beth and Adam also, because I forgot when we were doing Commissioner Fastigi. So any parting words here or last
Yes,
questions?
Just quickly, I would like to say thank you. You may not know, but some of the money that you all appropriated last year really saved us from a serious cybersecurity issue that was very close to putting us in the same position as the city of Baltimore, or closer to home, UVMMC.
Oh,
And the software that we bought with that money that you appropriated really alerted us early and gave us the opportunity to stop that threat at the door. So a sincere thank you from all of us for supporting the agency and our funding request around cybersecurity.
Oh, great.
well, good. Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do something right. So thank you very much, Secretary. And we will I'll let you know when this, in case you want to watch, in case any of the 4 of you want to watch, whoever comes forward, and I'm not sure anybody will, but we've set aside some time, and we'll get back to you with that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Let me know
you.
if you need anything else.
Thank you.
Bye, John. Thanks. Madam Chair, I just have to turn off my camera and stand up for a minute.
All right. So we have Secretary Young with us.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So you were here when I talked about how I've had a couple requests for people who want to just make comments, and that made sense that we should hear from them. So we've set aside some time next week to do that, because we didn't want to interfere with your time with us.
Okay.
So I'm going to just kick it off here and ask you what it is about this job and why you think you want to do it for a couple more years.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senators, for having me and for taking up my confirmation upon my reappointment by Governor Scott for another term as Secretary of Administration. That's a big question, especially after this year, Senator White. But, when I first considered taking this appointment, I felt like it was a very good logical progression for me and for my public service and for the Vermonters that we serve, having served at that time about 36 years in state government in many very different roles, and had a pretty good, I felt, overview of government operations, government challenges, budgeting, money, I was in the AG's office. I did a lot of legal work in many different departments, and I think that has served me very well over the first 4 years. And then we come, to 3 years, and then we come to year 4, and I have to say, it's been quite the year in this role, and I felt very much prepared to serve during the pandemic, and very much appreciated the opportunity to serve in that environment. It was really hard. It's a lot of work, but what really has kept me going is how not only the agency that I've worked hard over the last 3 to 4 years to get to know, to work with, and to put some good leadership in those roles really paid off. And I'd love to continue this and work with this fabulous team. And if I could just digress there a little bit, I think what I've learned this year really is what a talented workforce we have across the board, frontline workers, all the way up to the leadership in the departments. I have been incredibly humbled by this, but also just so impressed with the resources just within the agency of administration that you really didn't know you had until you really needed them. And, when John Quinn mentioned before me, thank you for the money for the software. We have a tiny little division called risk management in the agency of administration that works really hard and worked incredibly hard through the pandemic to make sure all the insurance policies we might need for the surge response and bringing on medical team and all of our potential liabilities were covered. And 2 years ago, she came to me and said, we need cyber insurance. And she went out and she brokered it, and she got a policy that went into place last July 1, and it saved us millions of dollars, I think, as you know, with the unemployment compensation breach. So, just a little 2-person team, can bring so much to the work that we do. And every one of the departments in the agency had a special and unique role that they were able to step into or accommodate during the pandemic. We had, as you know, $1.25 billion come in the door and out the door in a 9-month period. And the number of people in the administration, secretaries in the agency of administration, the departments of BGS, finance, tax, HR, all that stepped up to make that money come and go, and then to respond to the emergency was really heartening and was surprising to me that we would play such a role in an emergency health to responding to a health emergency. So I just want to say that motivates me to spend some more time in this job. That motivates me to work through this session, and then we have one more big tranche of money to get out the door, and possibly a third. And I've learned a lot from doing the coronavirus relief fund rollout, and I feel like we've got to get through these next 2 large pieces of financing from the feds and put it to good use, working with all of you.
Senator Collmore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And hi, Suzanne. It's good to see you.
Hello, Senator.
I don't mean this to be a loaded question in any sense. And it's just something as you were talking, I thought of. So if I were to ask you, what is the one thing that you really look forward to doing or, in your job each day? That's sort of on one side. And then we obviously have to ask the other question too. What's the one thing that when you get up in the morning, you go, oh, I wish I didn't have to do that, or it sort of is a negative part of the job? Is that a fair question?
I think that's fair, absolutely. If I may start with answering what I don't look forward to, very clearly for me, I don't look forward to working in this remote environment much longer. I really do feel like it's I think hindered all of us. And in our interactions, our personal interactions, how we've worked together, and specifically, with the legislature in the past. I think we've all, I won't speak for all of you, but I know I've really come to value being in the State House, being in that vibrant, democracy venue with the media, with the lobbyists, with the public protests, the peaceful protests. That all has taken on a whole new meaning for me, trying to navigate in the last 2 years in this remote environment with the legislature, and that ties over to everything that we do. We've all adapted, we've all done a great job, but it's not the same. And so I really look forward. I don't look forward to my days of constant Zoom and/or Teams meetings like all of you face, and that really is a part of this job that I hope goes away very soon, and I think it will. What I look forward to every day, again, it's every day is a new day, Senator. As much as my calendar always seems to be back-to-back meetings, there's some issues you can anticipate that you have to work on in a given day, but every day there's something new, and I like that. The new challenge. It's just a very busy office that kind of crosses issues that come from all of state government up through the secretary's office. And that's a challenge I like. And I really enjoy working with the other leadership members. The cabinet is very close. It's very, it's very collaborative. It communicates, pretty much constantly with each other. And I think that is something in this administration that I haven't seen in other administrations, which makes it all the more rewarding, because we really are a team.
Thank you very much.
Senator Rahm?
Hello, Senator.
So I'm really cognizant, I think at this moment, I'm sure you are too, about the large amount of federal money we're getting. It's one-time money. It's a lot to sort of spend and see what adds value to Vermonters' lives. We're now in the minority of states that don't have a planning office or some kind of like budget and planning oversight organization that has a dotted line to the governor's office. How do you feel like we'll be able to best understand how the money we're spending one time is impacting the lives of Vermonters with the current infrastructure we have if we don't add some more planning and evaluation capacity?
I recall well, the planning office that had been in place, I think, for years up through Governor Dean's administration. And the way I have seen that evolve, and the way that planning and policy function now operates within this administration, is that planning and policy advice is coming from the experts in the field, from the secretary's offices, from their policy points, from their experts. And again, I think it works because we are, we meet every week. We plan. We are, just as an example, working through this emergency. Many of us got together every morning at 8 o'clock every day for, weeks on end, and those meetings have, dissipated. And now we're meeting and we're bringing in ideas and our planning for the American Rescue Plan money, and where, based on our experience, having gone through the pandemic, having seen the economic impact, the individual impacts, we're bringing all of our experiences and our expertise to bear in putting together a proposal and a package as to how we best feel we should spend the money. and build a stronger Vermont and meet all the needs through the recovery period. So I think we have that covered. I think it's a matter of style. I think it's worked very well for Governor Scott. If there are, areas where folks feel that there's not planning or not oversight, I would certainly love to hear about that. In terms of the oversight of the cash itself and then the flow in and out, the mechanics of that, we have a whole department dedicated to that, which is the Department of Finance, and then we have our policy points and our leadership coming in and speaking to the legislature about the proposals that are based on some planning and are based on past experience and what we've seen through the pandemic.
I mean, so just to follow up, I think from my recollection, and I was not in state government at the time last year, there were a lot of advocacy groups begging to have information on health outcomes and COVID infection by race. It took a while for that to happen. And once we did have that information, that's when we discovered that Black Vermonters were up to 4 to 10 times as likely to be infected with COVID-19. And the Department of Health and others jumped into a very specific response, recognizing that that's a huge disparity.
Right.
I think it's made a lot of people wonder, what about a lot of other issues, where people can't always advocate and beg for there to be some disaggregation of information. So I just wonder, from that one experience, if you're thinking differently about how you evaluate information and respond in real time.
Well, thank you, Senator White. I hearken back often to the conversations we had about the director for racial equity position when that was first, an idea that was being floated. And, I think that position, to your point, Senator Rahm, really, brought us around to, we're not keeping the data we should be keeping. Susanna was an incredible advocate for that at the beginning of the pandemic, all the way through to the vaccination policy. So that is the type of expertise that we now have on staff that is making us aware of issues, helping us plan around those, and recognize that there are things we haven't thought about before. And I think in Vermont, we're really blessed to have a very strong advocacy community outside of state government. And we do listen to the advocates. And I think many of the proposals brought forward through the process we use for the CRF, CRF funding over the winter last year after you had adjourned, originated with advocacy groups for those who don't have their own voice. So, we're always willing to listen and learn. And if I think folks are always willing to let us know when we may have missed something. But Susanna was definitely an asset through this, and we've all learned a lot from her.
Senator Polina?
Hi.
Hi, how are you, Senator?
Well, I'm okay. I'm a little tired of sitting on Zoom meetings myself, but it's just occupational hazard these days.
Yeah, true.
In your position, you really oversee much, if not all, of state government. Eventually, it comes down to you as the head of the Secretary of Administration. And we face a lot of challenges, obviously, in Vermont, and we're not the only place that does. There's a lot of challenges around this country, but whether it's pensions, colleges, K through 12 education, whatever it might be. I'm just wondering if you had to, is there any part of state government or any one of these challenges where you just wish you could take it away and start over and rebuild some system? What would you like to just do away with and start over from scratch, and you could build a better system than what we have?
Well, that's a tough one. I'll start by saying that one of the governor's first executive orders was to it was called the pivot, process improvement, looking at structure of every aspect of your agency and department, applying the lean principles, and we had the chief performance officer who helped us do that. We have a whole team now of individuals who are engaged in looking at our processes and leading them, and making sure, you know, we're added value to Vermonters, and that we're doing things as efficiently as we can. So I think if I looked at it, you know, on a department or agency-wide basis, I'm not sure I could tell you, but I can tell you that individually we have found areas where we have rebuilt. You know, we've looked at the process and we've said, this is crazy. This is a process that has been, you know, added to over the years, and we need to kind of take it apart and see what works and doesn't work. And you know, they're not really exciting on a macro level, but they're pretty exciting when you see state employees step up and say, boy, if I have to do this, you know, one more time, this unnecessary photocopy or this unnecessary step in this process. And for instance, our purchasing, our contracting process was just a bear. And we brought together about 14 state employees who had a piece of it. And they spent 3 days in a room together, and they deconstructed it, and then they reconstructed it and presented it to us. And we actually implemented many of their recommendations to make for a more efficient process. And the best, one of the better parts of this job is when they read out to you and they present to you what their ideas are. You know, you say, well, how do you, I always ask, how did you feel about the process? And they just, you know, have this like, this was great. Finally, you know, someone is, you know, we're getting a chance to actually focus on a process that we know has been broken for years. So we have been doing that on a smaller basis. Another one that, you know, some of them actually result in legislation, and that was background checks for contractors, which I bet you probably touched the bill, where we have all of these contractors who come into secure state facilities, be it barracks or correctional facilities. And they're the same contractors, but they have to go through a different background check before they can get a contract. And so we did consolidate that. It took us 3 years, and it required, you know, working with Homeland Security, you know, the National Center for, you know, Crime Information, and the legislature to get all of the permissions in place to do one background check per contractor, which would get them into every state building. And so those are the kinds of things where I feel, you know, we're doing that kind of deconstruction work on a kind of a program by program basis, and bringing a lot of added value to, in that case, the contractors who only have to go through the process once, and you know, the contract process, which is much more efficient. So that
Isn't it amazing how small things can take such a long time to create
Yeah.
change? It's just incredible.
Yeah, and the frontline, you know, employees, they're the ones, they're just delighted. They love it that, you know, we're making their days more efficient, and they're not looking at something they know is so inefficient. They don't want to do it, you know, over and over again. It's the thing that makes them not want to go to work in the morning, right?
Right.
So it's been pretty, you know, that's been an exciting part, and that's sort of something that we've had to, it hasn't completely fallen off, but we haven't had a chance to do as much as that during the pandemic. And I look forward, and I've asked Sue to get that, you know, revitalized and make sure we get some of those projects back on track.
Senator Clarkson? You're muted. My dear, you're muted.
I'm trying to be so good, you know, and then I forget. So I just love to tag, because Anthony, it's a good, I'd like to tag on your question, because I was going to ask, you know, what are you proudest of, Suzanne, that you've implemented in terms of change in the administration? Because it's ripe with opportunities, I'm sure. And you've touched on a couple of them, which, and I just would, if there were any others that you wanted to share, I'd love, and I don't mean this to be a political question, but I would love your input, because one of the areas you do oversee is the interface with the legislature. And I'm just curious if there are ways, now that you've been in this position for 4 years and you're in your 5th or 6th, no, 5th, this is the beginning of 5, right? Is what might we do to improve our relationship?
Right. I think I'm the most proud to be a part of a bigger thing, which is, as I've alluded to a couple of times, which is a very functional cabinet that works together. I think I'm most proud of the fact that I've seen a lot of silos in my career, and I see a lot of silos that have been broken down, and we have so much interagency collaboration and work that's ongoing. And I am very, very proud of that because it makes for a better work product and better service to Vermont. And what I'm also proud of is, to your question about working with the legislature, I learned early on, one person can't know everything. And there's a lot of complexity to the work that we do. And if we're at our best, I think, when we're presenting to legislative committees as a whole. And we've done that over the years on some key issues, and had 3 or 4 people in the room actually who were experts talking together with committees about issues. And I think that's when we've been, I think, most successful in conveying to you why we believe a policy is the right way to go, and all of the complexity around it. And if they're interagency policies that we're talking, with you as a group. Again, it's been a little harder to pull that off in the last 2 years with the pandemic, but I think we've. I think one thing we've struggled with, to be absolutely honest, and the answer during the pandemic is kind of following bills across committees, and there's sort of the policy committees and then the money committees, and we're losing that, I think, that hallway interaction as the bill crosses through, and being able to come in and say to Senator White, this bill's in your committee, I'd like to talk about it, but then going and talking, about the same bill to Senator Kitchell is just not the time for that because of the way we have to operate. So I think, again, when we're back in a building together, we're going to be much more appreciative of what we had and how it worked. And to answer your question, I would say we improve on that and communicate more and communicate with the right people in the room at the right time. So we're not sort of in our silos talking out pieces and parts.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Secretary Young? Senator Polina?
Yeah, going back, we know we're going to get all this one-time or all this money coming in. And obviously some of it has to be spent on things that are seen as sort of emergencies or urgencies. But
Right.
How could you see us in making some long-term investments that might actually
Yeah.
improve the lives of regular working Vermonters? I mean, where should we focus some of those dollars for long-term stability for our economy?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, this money is very different from the coronavirus relief money, which was emergency money. Really, I mean, that's why Congress gave us only 9 months to spend it and get it out the door and shore up our health response and our economic, our economic response, or our response to those businesses that we needed to support and the people we needed to support through the pandemic. And now we do have this wonderful opportunity to spend the money that is coming in from the American Rescue Plan in a really mindful way. We have almost 4 years to expend it. It is, there are some strings attached to it. The ability to spend it, which is always frustrating. But what we were really excited about is that the American Rescue Plan allowed us to use the discretionary money for specifically water or sewer or broadband. And that is huge. And so what you're going to be seeing from the administration in the next week is our ideas about how to devote a bulk of that money to those, precise areas, which broadband clearly is going to help everybody in the long run if we all have equal access, be it schools, businesses, government workers who need to telework, legislatures. So there are and then the sewer and the water projects and the water, the water quality projects connected to water or sewer that we may finally, be able to put a real money into and solve those issues once and for all. And of course, a clean environment and clean water serves everybody. So we are, developing, putting some final touches on our broad stroke plan and how we would roll out the money in 4 years, which we'll be bringing to the legislature next week. And, there will be some economic development recommendations, specific business recovery recommendations there, but not as much as you saw with the coronavirus relief. We're really trying to think big and bold and what's going to have the most impact. And like I say, we can't use it for everything we would like to use it for because there are restrictions on that Congress put on the money. And then if we have a American Jobs Fund, which we just were hearing about yesterday, another tranche of money, I think the real trick is going to be, where do we put it all to the best use and how do we leverage it? Because that will have totally different uses attached to it, but there'll be some overlap. It really is kind of like a puzzle. It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, trying to make sure you get the right piece of money to the right program and the right use.
Yeah.
Yes, Senator Clarkson.
Well, just to tag onto that also, just clarity on whose responsibility funneling that money will be, whose responsibility, and clarity from the federal government about, and amongst ourselves, about who's appropriating what, when, and when will we have guidance, guidance in order to actually do any of that work.
I ask every morning. So the way I worked with the Coronavirus Relief Fund was basically, we were given notice, and as the Secretary of Administration, I received the notice that if I wanted the $1.25 billion, I needed to sign a certification and return it to the Treasury. And basically the certification is that, we need the money and we will spend it, within the rules of the game that they set. And that came really quickly after the bill passed. And we turned it around really quickly. And I think we had $1.25 billion, maybe within 4 to 5 weeks, but I'd have to go back and check. This time is a little different and it feels a little slower. And I think it's a change in administration, most likely, but also kind of a change in the purpose. They're not feeling that this is an emergency, that this is recovery money. And so I don't know, I don't have any insight as to why it's taking so long, but we're now 3 weeks out and the bill is passed and we're still no closer to knowing when the Treasury is going to send us the certification. So I think I don't have it right in front of me, and I did ask yesterday, I think they have 60 days under the American Rescue Plan to send us the certification. We'll have some time to turn it around and then they'll send us some money. Within 30 days of receiving that money, Congress gave the state the money for the municipalities. There's about $191 million of the $1.36 billion that we have to spend, which is going to be a pass through the Secretary of Administration to the towns, villages, and cities, because it's kind of a direct appropriation from Congress, but we were asked to, pass it through. And that's a formula. Congress has already decided how much each town and village is going to get. We have to get that out in 30 days. The trick to that one, however, will be, since we don't have county government, there's a chunk of money that goes to the counties. And for states like Vermont, we are enabled under the law to divvy it up to the towns within the county.
Right.
And so we're doing that math now and hoping.
Having heard from our assistant judges who remind us there are county aspects.
Yeah.
I would encourage us also to be cognizant of the county functions. We do have our sheriffs and our departments and our courthouses, all of which desperately need HVAC systems, and many of them need some of that. So I would hope we would incorporate the tiny bit of county government we actually have.
I think that's probably a discussion we're going to have with the appropriations committees, because I don't think the Congress gave us that authority to divvy anything out to counties if we fell into one of those states. I remember with the ARA money, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I was actually there for the ARA money,
Right.
and that all went to counties. And I remember working with someone in the Attorney General's office, going to each side judge, asking them if they would transfer, their money to the state so we could get it out to where it needed to go. So it's a tough one. Congress assumes everybody's got working, really vibrant counties who are doing the work of general government, and they're doing little pieces and parts. But I think we got the money out to the courthouses and to the judiciary and to the sheriffs through the coronavirus relief money, and I'm sure we'll work it out with this money.
I think that one of the things that happened, I don't remember if it was under the ARA money or if it was Hurricane Irene, Tropical Storm Irene, that we got special dispensation to have our regional planning commissions be our county conduit. And I think that might be a really important thing to do here, to allow, because these small towns are going to need assistance in in using and applying for it, getting and reporting on these money. So we're actually having a hearing next week from the regional planning commissions and from the VLCT on how they might be able to act as the county conduit.
Didn't we appropriate money to VLCT to do that work?
Yes, we've been very supportive.
$1,000, I think.
Yeah, I think the VLCT was appropriated 900,000. I'm working from memory. So they will be, we really are just the pass through, and it's going to go through the towns, and the towns are going to be the ones who are responsible for doing the accounting of the money, for spending it for eligible uses. So the league was given some resources so that they can carry out the advisory and support role for the towns and eligible uses and how to account for it. It's a lift. I understand the regional planning commissions did want to come in and receive the county shares. Our research of the federal law did not put them in a class of non-governmental entities that we could transfer that money to. So we feel like it's pretty clear we've got to divvy it up amongst the towns, but they were also given an appropriation so that they can work with the towns on a more regional basis on big projects that cross, regional projects. So they also do have a role. And I think the debate in that I heard in Senator Probst is, the towns can reach out to the regional planning commissions can reach out to the towns and work together. There's nothing to prohibit them from working together on those types of projects that the RPCs could be really helpful with. So there's money for them to carry out that function.
I am going to ask if there are any last questions here, or Secretary Young, if you'd like to make a last goodbye to us, because I believe we have Commissioner Gresham waiting in the waiting room.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you. I won't take up any of Commissioner Gresham's time. But again, thank you for having me. Thank you for your support in the past. I still am humbled and amazed that I'm serving in this position, and really feel fortunate that I was able to serve through this pandemic, as we all, I think, feel a lot of pride and respect for what we've all gone through in such a respectful, cooperative, and collaborative way. So thank you again, and I will hope to see you soon in real person. So
thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. Thanks. All right. So Commissioner Gresham, here you are.
Here I am.
And you know all of us. And I'm going to ask you the question to start this off. What is it about this job that makes you willing to and want to do it again for another couple of years?
I guess I'll start off by saying that this job not quite 4 years ago. I came here in July of 17, not long after the governor was elected. And I think I told you then, or it would have been the following winter, that I enjoyed working in public policy, and I enjoyed finance. And so I found them to be a very good mix. I will acknowledge that the job requirements have shifted quite substantially in the past year. And the commitment, both in terms of time, and I just think in terms of intensity, have changed dramatically. But that, for me, hasn't taken the enjoyment out of it. I would say that it's still, a job that I enjoy. And I wouldn't call myself a people person, but I enjoy working with other people for a common cause in the administration and with the legislature. So I frankly look forward to another couple of years of service. But going back to what I said earlier, it's a good combination of kind of public policy and finance, and I enjoy that.
Great, thanks. Senator Collmore?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, Adam. Good to see you. So of the 3 other folks we've talked to today, who are the other administration officials that are going to appear before government operations, you're the only one that's a former legislator.
Right.
And I'm kind of curious. I assume, as we each in this room have an opinion of the administration, different people, what they do, kind of like the good part, the bad part. Has anything shifted for you once you became a member of the administration? Do you now look back at the legislature and say, oh, I know what's going on over there?
So that's actually a fascinating question.
Well, thank you.
I will harken back to a conversation I had actually with a former colleague and chair of Ways and Means, who I know Senator Clarkson and Senator Rahm both know very well. And I remember years ago talking with her, and she, as you're aware, worked in the executive branch for, I believe, Governor Dean. And she made a comment to me at one point offhandedly. She said, working in the executive branch really helped educate my work as a legislator. And I thought that was interesting. I, put it in my pocket and didn't think as much about it until years later when I joined the administration. And I realized that, I knew this kind of academically all along, but there is 3 branches of government, and there are differences between each of the branches. And I remember as a legislator thinking, gosh, the executive branch, they've just got such a kind of an advantage over the legislature. They're there all year. They've got, a bunch of people, departments they can draw on. They've got a lot of expertise. It's very difficult to kind of on a knowledge level and even a legislative level keep up with them. And now that I'm in the executive branch, it's a little bit of the grass is always greener, and that you look at the legislature and say, gosh, in terms of decision-making bodies, you've got these committee structures, which for better or for worse are often very well set up for bouncing ideas around and looking at very different angles. You all come from different areas and different philosophical viewpoints. That can be a very powerful decision-making body, an idea-generating body. And, in addition, you have the resources, for example, the Joint Fiscal Office, Legislative Council. And so I've caught myself almost looking with envy across the pond, say, at the, in the State House. But I would say that as a legislator, it has very much educated my opinion on the executive branch. I think it's very helpful to have an experience facing voters. I can't emphasize enough how kind of experience forming that is. And knowing that there are, hundreds, thousands of people out there with opinions, and that the legislative body has to go back to them, and that they're supposed to be representing them. Now, I realize the governor too is representing them, but I can tell you that it's helped educate the work I do and kind of my viewpoint on working with the legislature. It's been, I wouldn't trade it for anything, really. It's been very helpful.
I appreciate that answer a lot, Adam. And I can remember when you were in the House. So you've seen both sides of it. It is sort of, I don't know if it's strange to me. It makes me kind of puzzled sometimes when I'll hear a constituent say, those people in Montpelier, they did this or they did that. And I know that that person is meaning the legislature because we're the ones that make the laws. But oftentimes it's the administration that, executive branch is in charge of carrying out those laws. And I think for a lot of folks, the focus is always on the governor and whether he or she has done anything by us. But I've always wanted to ask that question. And I wonder, and you've gone from legislature to executive, and I assume the person you mean, I think, is still in Ways and Means, and went the other way. And I often wonder whether there's a difference between which journey you took first. But anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Senator Clarkson?
Well, thank you. I had 2 years ago the pleasure of speaking on Adam's behalf in front of the Senate. And the biggest challenge you faced then was retention.
Yeah.
And you spoke to us a real concern about being able to keep the people in your office that you valued and that were trained and had years of experience. And retention was, I think, the biggest challenge you faced. And I'm just curious how you're doing on that. How is the retention problem in your office? I know you trained good people and who's that? I think that was me somehow, but I don't know how it happened. But anyway, it was like a pop-up call. Anyway, who knows? I have no idea what that was. Sorry. So I'm just curious, how are you doing on retention? And do you see fewer people being poached after you've trained them?
So that's another interesting question. When I arrived in July of 17, there were, a full contingent of budget analysts that work in our office. There was no deputy commissioner. There was no budget director. And in between that time and now, there is a different budget director. There's a new budget director, Hardy Merrill, who joined 6 months ago. There's a new deputy commissioner, Ethan Latour, who replaced Matt Riven. And every analyst but one is turned over. However, having said that, I will say the analysts, the new hires are now almost 3 years at in the longest tenure, and a year and a half in the shortest tenure. And they have not left. They've remained with us. And to me, that is a success. I will say, however, that typically people, the time frame for job movement, job maturity, say, is 3 to 5 years. And in a small department, it's very challenging to keep people because we're small. We just don't have that many avenues to go. And so, that's going to continue to be a challenge, but I'm happy to say the analysts that we have hired, every one of them that we have hired since I've been there is still with us. But I just want to be sober about it. And instead of patting myself on the back and saying it's all me, I just want to say that I think a lot of them have spent the time coming up the curve. They're now very strong. In fact, interestingly enough, I've started to bring them with me, and a number of them have started to testify because they're really the experts in their field. But having said that, I will say that someone who has looked at budgets across various departments, and our analysts are assigned, typically they choose, but we make sure we divvy up all the agencies and departments in government, and they take assignments and they follow those departments. So, after doing that for a couple of years, you become pretty darn good at knowing what's going on in a lot of different areas of government. And that makes you a very attractive candidate for business offices. What I will also say, though, is, whereas to me, it would be a bit of a challenge when you've trained someone and they move on. To state government, it would be an unequivocal success. If people move from finance and management into, agriculture or human services and stay with state government, I think from, the global picture, that's a success. You want people to spend time in state government. You want them to stick around. You want them to build their expertise. So, whether or not they end up in our department long-term, I think as long as they stay in state government, it's a win-win for all of us.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Senator Rom?
Commissioner, I asked a similar question of our Secretary of Administration, but we're getting a lot of one-time money. How would you measure the success of our deployment of that one-time money?
So, well, first, from purely a budgetary standpoint, what you want to do is use one-time money for either unique projects or large projects or the like that don't require continual reinforcement. You want to use one-time money for one-time expenses. But the kind of the symbol or the thought that I always have when looking at this money is you can still today drive across a bridge in Vermont or pass a building in Vermont that was built in 1927, after that flood where large parts of the state were seriously damaged. And, a lot of money was deployed, both federal and state, predominantly federal, and, the state was patched together. And that's lasting. Those are things that you can hold and I always think in my head of bringing hopefully my grandchildren at some point around and saying that thing right there, whatever it is, was built with, after the pandemic. And that was kind of the silver lining. So I think the success is, can we make strategic investments that will be lasting? I mean, there's always, and I say that knowing that we never have enough money in our base budget to do all the things we want to do. I get that, but I think the success will be, can we make investments that are lasting, that we'll be able to point to in years that go by and say that was from the pandemic, and that helped. I mean, some obvious examples of that we've thought of both in the administration and I know legislatively they thought of is, for example, bringing broadband to everyone. That will be lasting. Years from now, we'll look back on that and say, that was done during the pandemic. Another great example of that would be kind of building new and updating old housing stock, so that Vermont will have more housing, more affordable housing. So those would be, in my view anyway, measures that we could point to say, that was a good strategic investment. And I hope we have the horsepower and the advocacy, both, in the executive branch and the legislature to get that.
Can I just ask a follow-up?
Yes.
So I think it's one thing to say more broadband, more housing, but, would you want there to be some kind of metric out there for how much or how much better?
I think the metrics would be developed before we come out with proposals. But yes, absolutely. Everything we do, we want to be measurable. So you would have to say that, I don't know what the metric would be, for example, for housing. But I would say that you would need to have measurable goals that you're trying to achieve before you stick your first dollar into the project.
Senator Bellina?
Hi, Adam. I'm wondering, you build budgets for a living, and we look for certain outcomes from our budgets, but I'm wondering what parts of the state budget and maybe the state's economy do you feel keeps you awake at night, is most troublesome or weakest link in terms of challenges that we face and being able to balance our budget and make the investments we need to make?
So historically and currently, I can give you a couple of examples. Within our human services area, we have one area in particular we call general assistance that I'm sure you're quite familiar with.
Sure.
And this is an area that helps the most of the most vulnerable. These are the most people who need a lot of help. It's been very challenging to fund it on a regular basis. Prior, to the pandemic and prior to all the federal money, we were struggling to keep up with the demand. And that is one area of the budget that is clearly troubled. And, I know that Children and Families has had proposals. I know the legislature has had proposals. And I think, interestingly enough, many people have said if you had to look for a couple of silver linings to this whole thing, one of them is that we've been able to put a roof over the head of every person who has needed it. But the troubling aspect of it is we know that what we've done is not sustainable. We need to figure out a way to make it sustainable. So that has always been troubling to me. In past years, our spending on Medicaid has also been troubling. Interestingly enough, I think that over the past years, the trend has been our friend in that regard. In that part of it, I believe, has been that we've kind of looked at the all-payer model and the accountable care organization we've created in OneCare that I think has helped bend the curve a bit. But it's early years on that. We don't know that for a fact. But it does seem as if our Medicaid spending is moderated, in part due to the growth in the economy, in part to, I think, to the way we've approached the provision of healthcare. But that too has been a very challenging area of our budget that we're still trying to get a handle on. I want to be clear. I mean, having all this, it's been very. It's been a challenge to become accustomed to when I first started here in the first few years, kind of squeezing and pinching and coming out with balanced budgets. It seems to have totally changed now. Now we have, two very large and very good federal packages that have come in, and suddenly we have, our problems are how do we deploy the money wisely as opposed to how do we have enough money to deploy. So it's very different, but some of the old problems that you asked me to refer to earlier still remain.
So I am curious, you are developing budgets and working with people to develop the budget. You're looking at kind of the whole state and the whole state budget. And how do you, and maybe this isn't a problem, but how do you approach commissioners or secretaries in other agencies who really disagree with your budget analysis of what they need?
So yeah, that's always a challenge. And what we do at first, and typically it's usually the last few days of August, first few days of September, we send out budget instructions. And those instructions are educated by goals that the governor has given us, and by revenues that we know we have available through the consensus revenue forecast. And we ask for their submissions back to us. And in those submissions, we ask them to include all of their wants, and they do. and we put them together. And then we go speak with the governor and his staff, and we make recommendations to them about what we think are advisable. And ultimately, it's the decision of the governor. You know, he's got the biggest picture of all. We try to educate his opinion and do the best we can to lay out all his options, but ultimately, it's up to him to decide what he wants to emphasize and what he wants to de-emphasize. And you know, that's a challenging decision, as always. But I look at myself as trying to give him all the options and make recommendations, but ultimately it's his decision to make.
Thank you. Senator Clarkson, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, you spoke about silver linings, and there have been some amazing silver linings to COVID, and they come really around the lessons we've learned. And so I'd like to ask you, you know, what are the lessons learned from your area in your department? What are the lessons learned that you're going to come out of the pandemic with having learned?
There's one lesson that probably won't surprise you and one that might, but the one that won't surprise you is I've learned that there are many different ways of achieving the same result. And by that, I mean specifically heretofore in, 35 years or so of working in various endeavors, I've always viewed work as the kind of thing where you either hop on your bike or start out walking or get in your car and you go to your office. And I've been amazed, really, and I know that I'm not the only one, but I'll state it for you. I've been amazed at how you can, within a matter of a week, flip that around. So much so that there's going to be, I think, a real challenge figuring out where we want to go when the all clear sign comes out. That's going to be a challenge for state government. As you're aware, we have a very large footprint statewide. I mean, I couldn't believe actually how much just land and buildings the state owns. I mean, it's unconscionable. If you're ever interested and to see, Jennifer Fitch, the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services, has a chart that shows you all the different holdings. Now, not all of those are office buildings and desks and computer hookups, but a lot of them are. And certainly in Montpelier and Waterbury and in Burlington, actually. So, what I've learned from that is that there are many different ways to achieve the same work result. It's been, for my department anyway, it's been extraordinarily successful working remotely. And I think one of the challenges is going to be decide how we want to go forward. I'm well aware that there are many folks in my department and within the agency of administration, frankly, that are very happy doing what they're doing at work. I would say what I've learned that I think surprised me a bit more is how much capacity there is to do more if you have to. I mean, I always thought I was pretty busy and my department was pretty maxed, but there's some energy there, there's some reserve there that I simply didn't anticipate. I mean, the old saying is you get much more done when you're busy. And that really proved to be the case. And I think a little troubling to me, frankly, is you can't operate at this level forever. So I think there's been some burnout. I think there's been, some issues that we've had to deal with. But I just didn't, I learned that there's a fairly decent reserve you can tap into, I would argue, over the short term. But that was a surprise to me. So.
We just have to make sure we don't keep tapping into that on and on and on and really wear people out.
Yeah. Well, you guys have shared that. I mean, you're in it too.
Yeah.
I know, and we're all sick of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So any more questions for the commissioner?
Well,
Well,
may I just ask one last one, which is sort of a softball, but last time you were so specific when I asked you what you were proudest of. Said you were so proud of getting a handle on the internal service fund. And I'm wondering if you have something else like that you're really proud that you've sort of tackled and feel much better about now that because you were still sort of newish at that point, but now you've been in it for a while, you're starting your 5th year. Like, what are you proudest of? What have you?
Actually, I would say, I would have gone there again, but I would say that the improvement in our balance sheet, it's not just internal service funds. We paid off some loans that also I think have been very, just kind of stuck out there as not advisable on our balance sheet. And we've also reduced our borrowing trajectory so that our balance sheet looks quite a bit cleaner. And ultimately that's what I pass along to the person, to the guy or the woman who succeeds me. And so I am proud of that. I do think, that's kind of the not so glamorous work that you do on a daily basis. But, at the end of the day, I think you're measured by what you pass on to your successor. And so my hope is that, we'll be able to stay the course on that. It's a good question, though.
I like that attitude about what you pass on to your successor, because we see it in towns and schools all the time that we put off a lot of maintenance.
Yeah.
And that's what we pass on to our successors, which is not the right thing to do. But so any more questions or comments? Well, thank you, Commissioner.
Good.